Hello, this is Scott. This week we're going to be covering demand theory. Demand theory is part of a series where we talk about buyer behavior, which we call demand theory, seller behavior, which we call supply, and then when we put them together in a market, we're going to be talking about equilibrium. This is by far and away the most important chapter of the semester. I really recommend that you make sure you have this material mastered. Not just that you're comfortable with it, but you have it mastered. This material is going to keep coming up again and again and again. I can't overstress the importance of this. If you need help, watch these videos, watch other online videos, read the book, go to tutor.com, see the tutors in the College Center, contact me, get a study group, ask questions. There are lots of resources. Okay, so I want to give you an idea of where we're going with this. We are going to try and understand individuals' incentives to act in a certain way. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the buyer side. And what is the buyer's motivation and incentive to buy under various situations? Then what we're going to do is we're going to shift to the seller motivation. We're going to understand when would they want to produce more, when would they want to produce less. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put the buyer and the seller together and they're going to meet. And where they meet is going to be called the market. And the buyers and sellers will have an opportunity to interact. Once they interact, we'll be able to understand what our predictions will be to will prices go up, will prices go down, will the amount society produces, will it increase, will it decrease, and is this good or bad for society? Okay, so let's start with buyers. We've all been buyers before. We've bought candy bars or hamburgers or shirts or socks, whatever. So we're going to start off with something called quantity demanded. And I want you to hear this carefully because we're going to be talking about quantity demanded and demand in a little bit. And these two things are related, but they are different. Quantity demanded has a three-part definition. In order to be included in quantity demanded, you have to be willing and able to purchase a product at a specific price at a specific point in time. This is going to be represented by a point. I'm going to show this on a graph on the next page. I would be willing to buy a $3 million lake home on Lake Minnetonka, but I'm not able to purchase a $3 million lake home on Lake Minnetonka. So I'm not included in quantity demanded. Again, remember that quantity demanded is your willingness and ability to purchase a product at a given price at a given point in time. So this is the first example of quantity demanded. So let's say I'm willing and able to buy 5 Inver Hills t-shirts a year at $10 each. Notice the 3 parts. In order to be included in quantity demanded, you have to be willing and able to purchase a specific quantity at a specific price. I have all 3 of those. So now that I have told you that I would buy 5 t-shirts at $10, we're going to throw that on the graph. So there are a couple things in that last graph I want to make sure that we really highlight. The first is we always put price on the vertical axis and we put our quantity on the horizontal axis. Right now we're talking about the market for Inver Hills t-shirts. And the price we're talking about here isn't the price of anything. It's not the price of hamburgers. It's not the price of South Florida t-shirts. It's not the price of anything. It is the price of the specific market we're talking about. These two items need to align. This, again, is represented by a point. It tells you how many of that particular item, the market item, Inver Hills t-shirts, you are willing to buy at that specific point. Okay, so now let's say the bookstore is having a sale, and the price of shirts went from $10 each to $8 each. We want to understand what that looks like on the graph. Now, be careful. What I just said was a simplification. What I said was the price fell from $10 to $8. And students will often think, okay, we're only going to be talking about one good. But in this case, we are only talking about one good. And when I talk about the price falling from $10 to $8, I'm talking about the price of Inver Hills t-shirts. I'm not talking about the price of other t-shirts or other items. So in this case, the price is going to fall and we're going to end up buying more of those t-shirts. So I want to show you that first of all, this is called movement along the curve. And I want to be really careful, movement along the curve. And its notation is a change in quantity demanded, which we're going to say QD. And I want you to notice that each quantity demanded and price combination, each row up here represents 1 point on the graph. Now what we just discovered here is what economists call the law of demand. Now I personally think it should be called the law of quantity demanded to avoid some confusion, but it's something that we've all experienced. If the price of a good or service falls, we'll choose to buy more of that good or service. That's why there's happy hours. That's why there are sales. If the price goes down, people are going to buy more. Ceteris paribus. Now, ceteris paribus is just a fancy word that says all else equal. If we change the price of Inverhill's t-shirts, if the bookstore has a sale, I'm going to buy more. That doesn't also assume that I lose my job, my income goes down, or that Kohl's or other stores have a sale that may lure me over there. All else equal, if the price goes down, I'm going to buy more. Now, one thing in economics, no matter what I say, the exact opposite is true. So a lot of times, I'll just cover one of these topics. If the price goes down, I'm going to buy more. The opposite's also true. If the price of a good or service increases, I'm going to buy less of it. I'm less likely to buy something as it gets more expensive. This relationship is called inversely related, because these two arrows are going the opposite direction. So before we talked about quantity demanded. Quantity demanded was how many of an item are you willing and able to purchase at a specific price at a specific point in time. And it was represented by a point. Now what we're going to do is ask not how many shirts you're willing to buy at $10, but how many you're willing to buy at every single price. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect all those points and make it a line. This collection of quantity demanded is called the demand schedule, or just called demand. And its notation is going to be a D. For example, before we had just said I would buy 5 shirts at $10 each. And also I would buy 7 shirts at $8 each. But what if I was the store manager and I'm thinking, I am thinking about selling shirts at $9 or $9.50. $9.50 isn't on here. So what we could do is we would need to be able to estimate and say, it hits the graph right here and it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 6. That gives us predictive power and something we're going to use. Again, each one of these lines, each point, is a quantity demanded. The collection of all the quantity demandeds together is what we call demand. So it's worth it for us to take a brief aside, even though we just introduced demand, to look at what's the market demand. This will actually help us out with some other challenges that we're going to have in a minute. The market demand is actually a simple concept that economists tend to make overly complicated with our jargon. I changed the numbers, and the numbers are going to change in the next few slides just so I can get it on the graph easier. But remember, each line and price represents the quantity that I'm willing to purchase at any given price. So at $10, I would buy 2 shirts. At $9, I'd buy 3. At $8, I'd buy 4. And this whole collection of quantity demand is demand. Now, if I am a shirt seller and I say, well, how many shirts can I sell at $10? What you would do is you would add up every buyer in that market at $10 and say, well, Scott's willing to buy 2, Angela's willing to buy 4, Julia's willing to buy 8, so 2 plus 4 plus 8 equals 14. I could sell 14 of them at that time. That concept is easy. The term, if you just read the book and it says the market demand is the horizontal summation of the individuals, leaves a little bit to be desired. So let's show you what this looks like graphically. The first column is the different prices. The second column, one with my name on it, is how many I'm willing and able to purchase at any given price. This column relates to this demand curve here. Then Angela also has her own demand curve, her own demand schedule. At $10, maybe she'd buy 4. So at $10, she'd buy 4. And this is her demand schedule. Julia has her demand schedule. At any given price, how many she's willing to buy. And the market is the horizontal summation at any given price. So at $10, you have 2 from Scott, 4 for Angela, and 8 for Julia. 2 plus 4 plus 8 equals 14. So as we move to the right, our demand is increasing. As we move to the left, our demand is decreasing. Okay, so just a recap, because we have 2 concepts that sound really similar. When we talk about there being a change in quantity demanded, what we're talking about is there's a change in the market price of that good now that causes us to move from one point on the demand curve to another point on the demand curve. So in our example, the only thing that can cause movement along the demand curve, the only thing that can change the quantity demanded of Inverhill shirts is if we raise or lower the price of Inverhill shirts. That's movement along the demand curve, and its notation is a change in QD. Next, we're talking about a change in demand. A change in demand is when the entire line shifts. It can't be caused by a change in price. It has to be caused by something else. We're going to get into that something else in a second. But for now, we know one of them is just the number. So now that we have an idea of what demand and quantity demanded is, let's talk about some of the things that can shift demand. We've already talked about what can change quantity demanded, which is movement along the curve, which is if we change the price of the market good. But what if other things change? So what if the bookstore is still selling Inverhill's t-shirts for $10 each, and now my income changes? There are only 3 things that can happen. So let's assume now my income increases. And again, we're going to get back to the inversely or directly related. So if my income goes up and I buy less of the good. So if my income goes up and I buy less of the shirts, and this relationship is inversely related, we're going to call Inverhill's shirts an inferior good. Maybe that's something like my income went up and I quit my job and I'm now going to go live on the beach and I'll only buy beach shirts. The more common examples may be ramen noodles or public transportation. If I get more money, I'm less likely to buy ramen noodles and I'm more likely to buy steak or sushi or something that I find. Or if my income goes up and I buy more of the good, that's what I'm going to guess. I'm making up this number here. It's in the high 90% of most goods are considered normal goods. So if I get more money, I'm going to go on more vacations. I'm going to buy a bigger house, maybe. I'm going to go to more movies. I'm going to go out to dinner more. So these are called normal goods. And again, these have a direct relationship. Remember, everything I say here, the exact opposite is true as well. So if my income goes down, if I buy less of it, it's a normal good. If my income goes up or down and the amount of goods I buy doesn't change, it's a neutral good. So for example, deodorant, toothpaste, toilet paper. I could land my dream job, make $1 million a year, and I'm not going to run out and say, I'm going to go buy 20 more things of toothpaste. The amount of toothpaste I buy is pretty stable regardless of whether my income goes up or down. Next, we're going to talk about prices of related goods. I'm not talking about the price of Inverhill's t-shirts anymore. I'm talking about the price of related goods. We're going to have 2 kinds of related goods. The first is going to be a substitute, and the next is a complement. A substitute can be used in place of the other good. They're interchangeable. The idea here is Coke and Pepsi. Notice here what I'm doing. The price of X, if the price of X goes up, it impacts the demand for the other. If both of these were X's, if the price of Coke went up, we wouldn't be talking about the demand for Coke, we'd be talking about the quantity demanded for Coke. But here, if I'm gonna have a party or something and I need to buy a bunch of soft drinks, if I go to the store and I'm thinking, okay, a case of Coke and a case of Pepsi is $5 each. And now I see that the price of Coke went up to $10 each. I'm going to switch from buying Coke and buy more Pepsi. As the price of one goes up, people switch from buying the first good into buying the other. That's a change of demand. So we could think of all sorts of substitutes. Duracell Energizer. You could think of food, so McDonald's, Burger King, and we'll have some examples for this in our discussion. The next type of good is a complement. A complement are goods that normally are purchased together. Hot dogs and hot dog buns, peanut butter and jelly, airfare and hotels. And the way I think about this is, think about going on a vacation. You have $1,000 budget. If the price of a airfare is $500 and the price of a hotel is $100, you may choose to buy 1 airfare and 5 nights at a hotel. But as the price of airfare increases, if it goes from $500 to $600, you have less money left over to spend on hotels. And the demand for hotels would go down. The price of one goes up, the demand for the other goes down. We could think about video games, consoles, and the games. Those are complements. Next, we could talk about preferences. Some goods become more or less popular over time. I remember picking up my grandmother at the airport when I was a young child, and she was really proud of her fur coat. That popularity has declined. The popularity of electric vehicles, Teslas, other vehicles, has increased over time. Sometimes preferences can change. And this is just a generic. As things become more popular, demand goes up. As things become less popular, demand goes down. Maybe the Vikings have a really good season this year, and their demand will go up. Maybe they're just going to be absolutely lousy, and their demand goes down. We did this one before. In a market, the more buyers that exist, the greater the demand. So as you add more and more buyers, demand increases. As you take away buyers, demand decreases. Now, here's one more that students often get confused on. This is the expectation of future prices. So this isn't that the prices have changed now. It's that you expect the prices to change in the near future. People are rational. So if I am going to buy a house, let's say, $250,000, if for some reason I expect the price of the house to change, I hear from my realtor or someone else that they're going to drop their price by $10,000 in a week, I want to know what's going to happen to my demand now. The price hasn't changed, so we don't have movement along the curve, but we expect the price to change. If you expect the price to be cheaper in the future, you don't want to buy now, you want to buy in the future, so your demand now falls. On the flip side, if you expect the prices to go up, you could either buy now at a lower price, or you could buy in the future at a higher price. You don't want to pay the higher price, you want to buy now. If you expect the prices to go up, your demand now will increase. Okay, so we're going to do a quick recap. The first thing we're going to talk about, we're going to recap the change in quantity demanded. The only thing that can change the quantity demanded, which is shown by movement along the curve, and the notation is QD, is if I change the price of the market good now. So in our example, Inverhill's t-shirts, the only thing that can change the quantity demanded of Inverhill's t-shirts is if I change the price of Inverhill t-shirts. If I raise the price of Inverhill's t-shirts, the quantity demanded declines. I'm going to buy less of them. If I decrease the price in Inverhill's t-shirts, then my quantity demanded will increase. Again, that's shown by movement along the curve. Next, what I have is a change in demand. It's shown by a shift of the curve, and the notation is D. There are 5 things that can cause demand to shift. The first broad category is income. When your income changes, you have to analyze and determine if the good is most likely a normal good, an inferior good, or a neutral good. What are those categories again? Well, a normal good is if your income goes up, you're going to buy more of it. That's what most goods are. An inferior good is if your income goes up, you're going to buy less of it. You're going to substitute away from it. The third one is if your income goes up and it's not going to change your buying behavior at all, you're a neutral good. That's like toothpaste again. The next category was price of related goods. If the price of one good causes the demand of another good to go up, then those are substitutes. That's like Coke and Pepsi. The next one is if the price of one good goes up and it causes you to buy less of the other good, those are complements. That was our airfare and hotel example. But next we have preferences. Sometimes things become more popular. Sometimes they become less popular. More popular like electric cars, less popular are like fur coats. As the number of buyers increases, the demand increases. And fifth, we have expected future price change. I want to be clear, this is an expectation. The price hasn't changed yet. If you're thinking about buying an Inverhill's t-shirt and you expect it to go on sale tomorrow, you're less likely to buy today. So this is all about what happens to your demand now based on what you think is going to happen in the future. So we're going to talk about 3 related markets. In these 3 markets, we're going to have pancakes, waffles, and syrup. Now you'll notice that there are 3 graphs that are all labeled with P and Q on the axis, so price and quantity. But really that P is shorthand, and each of those 3 P's means something different, which is really frustrating. The first P is really the price of pancakes. The next P is the price of waffles, and the third P is actually the price of syrup. What we're going to now do is we're going to say that the price of pancakes triple. Well, if I triple the price of pancakes, I'm actually only changing the market price in one of these markets. I'm only changing the market price is really the price of pancakes. The other 2, I'm not changing the price of waffles and I'm not changing the price of syrup. So only in the pancake market will I have a change in quantity demand. And only in the pancake market will I have movement along the demand curve. Now, as the price of pancakes goes up, my willingness to buy them declines. My quantity demanded goes down. Then I think, okay, price of pancakes went up. I'm buying less of them. Now I go to the store and all else equal, these waffles are now relatively cheaper. What's going to happen? Well, these are substitutes again. As the price of pancakes goes up, my demand for waffles increase. That line's going to shift. It's going to shift to the right. There's going to be an increase in demand for waffles. Now I want to think about syrup. Syrup and pancakes are related. They go together. If the price of pancakes goes up and I'm buying less of them, I am going to have less need for syrup. So my demand for syrup goes down. I hope this helps. we're going to be thinking about a whole bunch of different related markets. And this is a critical thing for you to understand, that the only way you can get movement along the demand curve and get a change in quantity demand is if we change the market price of the market good. I hope this helps.